I remember the moment clearly. We were sitting at the dining table going over wedding details. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and I was genuinely happy for her. She said the venue could fit 250 guests. So I asked if I could invite a few of my friends, just 20 people who had been like family to me over the years. She smiled and said, "Of course, send me the names." I typed them out that night and emailed the list over. It felt good to be included, to be part of something this big. I had raised Haley since she was 10. I helped her through her awkward years, celebrated every birthday, and gave every ounce of support a dad could give, even if I wasn't her biological father. She never called me stepdad, just dad. That meant something to me. So when she said I could invite my people, I took her word for it. I didn't think twice. I thought, finally. This is what being a parent feels like. Finally. I wasn't the man who showed up late to her life. I was her father. I believed that, until I saw the guest list. A week passed before I saw the list. It was taped to the fridge. My wife, Gwen, said it had just come in and asked if I wanted to look. I scanned the names with a smile, expecting to see familiar ones. But something felt off. I went through the entire sheet, then I read it again, slower this time. Not one name from my list was on there. I stood there in silence, waiting for the punchline. Maybe it was just a draft. Maybe my names were on another page, but there was only one page. 250 names, and not one of mine. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I waited until Haley came home. "Hey," I said gently, "I saw the guest list. Did you get my email?" She blinked and said, "Oh yeah, we had to make space for a few of Liam's relatives." Just like that. No apology, no second thought. The friends who'd watched me raise her, support her, and love her like my own, erased. I felt something inside me start to crack. I tried to brush it off. "It's your day," I told her. "I understand." But I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. 20 names, out of 250, and none made it? That evening I brought it up again, more carefully. "I know you had to make space," I said, "but were all of them more important than the people who helped raise you?" She gave a small laugh and shrugged. "It's not that deep. We had to cut somewhere. His family is flying in from 3 different states." That hit me hard. I wasn't mad at Liam or his family, but I couldn't understand how she'd forgotten all the people who had shown up for her long before Liam ever existed. Still, I smiled, nodded, said okay. I didn't want to be the difficult one. After all, everyone kept saying it. It's her day. But quietly I felt something shifting. A voice in me, one I'd buried for years, started whispering, "You don't matter here." That night, after Haley went upstairs, I spoke to Gwen. "Did you see the guest list?" I asked. She nodded, but didn't look at me. "She had to make hard choices," she said. "It's not personal." "Not personal?" I've been in her life for 10 years. I've sat through every school recital, helped her through breakups, paid for her braces, and saved for her college tuition. I never asked to be celebrated. Just remembered, a small corner of the guest list, a tiny sliver of appreciation, was all I wanted. Gwen reached for my hand but didn't say much else. I could tell she didn't want to pick sides. But her silence spoke volumes. And in that moment, I felt more alone than I had in years. Still, I told myself to let it go. I would smile, I would show up, and I would keep paying the bills. That's what fathers do, even when they're treated like shadows. Even when it hurts. Later that week, I found myself thinking about the small things. The lunches packed at 6 in the morning before school. The late-night drives to get Haley when her car broke down. The fake business trips I made up so she wouldn't feel bad I missed her school play, because I was actually working extra hours to afford her new laptop. None of it seemed to matter now. All those years I'd played the part. No, I lived the part. I wasn't just a stepfather. I was her dad. The one who stayed, the one who showed up, the one who never made her feel like she had to earn my love. And yet, somehow, when the biggest moment of her life arrived, I was quietly shifted to the background. No seat for my friends, no discussion about the guest list, no mention of a role for me in the ceremony. Just the man who kept writing the checks. I didn't want revenge, I didn't want drama, but I wanted to matter. And right then, I didn't. I went to the dress fitting like nothing was wrong. Gwen asked me to come so we could all take photos together. I stood there in the boutique, watching Haley step out in a gown she had picked, one I helped pay for. She twirled in front of the mirror, smiling, glowing. Everyone clapped. The photographer took pictures of her with Gwen, with her bridesmaids, and even with Liam's mother. Not once did she ask me to join in. I wasn't expecting a photo shoot, but a single photo? One photo for the man who raised her? Instead, I held the camera while they smiled. The tailor handed me the invoice. I paid it without a word. I smiled when I needed to. I laughed when others did. But inside, I felt like a guest at a party I helped plan. Only no one remembered I was part of it. Still, I told myself again, it's her day. But deep down, something was starting to harden inside me. Because even on her biggest day, I was still just the wallet. And the one behind the camera. A few days later, Haley came to the house to borrow something from the garage. As she left, she turned and said, "Thanks again for the car, by the way. It saved my life." I smiled. That moment, at least, felt real. I remembered when we bought it. Her old car had broken down for the third time, and she was panicking about getting to work. I didn't hesitate. I dipped into savings, found a used sedan in great shape, and had it detailed just for her. When she saw it, she cried and hugged me. That was only a year ago. Back then, I still felt like her dad. Back then, she still looked at me like I mattered. Now she was thanking me in passing, as if I were a distant uncle doing her a favor. Still, I nodded and said, "You're welcome," because that's what I always did. I played it cool. I stayed the good guy. Even when I started to realize I wasn't part of the family, just someone who paid to keep it running. A few weeks before the wedding, we were invited to a dinner with Liam's family. It was a casual pre-wedding event, just immediate family and close relatives. I didn't really want to go, but I knew I had to show up. I arrived early with Gwen. The backyard was set up with string lights, soft music, and platters of food. It was beautiful. Haley waved at us, looking happy and carefree. We chatted with some relatives, and things felt okay, for a while. Then she asked everyone to gather by the deck for a short announcement. I thought maybe it was about the seating chart or a thank you speech. I stood quietly, sipping my drink, waiting. Then I saw the door open behind her. And that's when I felt it, the twist in my stomach. The air in my lungs stopped. A man stepped out. He was clean-shaven, wearing a blazer and cologne that announced itself before he even said a word. Her real dad, Trevor, had arrived. Haley gasped when she saw him. "Oh my God, you made it!" she shouted, running across the yard. Everyone turned. Her voice was filled with joy. She threw her arms around Trevor and hugged him tight, like he had just returned from war. People clapped. Liam gave him a handshake. Gwen smiled. I stood still. I couldn't move. I wasn't even sure what I was supposed to feel. He hadn't been around. He hadn't raised her. He hadn't done any of the hard work. But there he was, glowing in the spotlight like he'd earned it. And then, like a knife through butter, she said it. I wanted this to be a surprise for everyone, but Dad is going to walk me down the aisle. The word Dad echoed in my ears. I smiled, reflex. But inside, something cracked. All the silent sacrifices, the moments I stepped in when he was gone, none of it mattered. One dinner, one smile, one sentence. And I was invisible. Haley clinked her glass, still holding Trevor's arm. "He's here, he's walking me down the aisle. It just feels right," she said. Everyone cheered again. Someone even said, "Oh, that's beautiful." Beautiful? I stood with my drink in hand, nodding, pretending I didn't feel like I'd been punched in the chest. No one looked at me. No one asked how I felt. I wasn't even mentioned. Trevor looked around like a guest of honor. Proud. Comfortable. I wondered if he even remembered what grade she was in when he left. I wondered if he knew she had asthma as a kid, or if he remembered her favorite color. But none of that mattered. He had a good suit and showed up at the right time, and apparently that was enough. I didn't say anything that night. I ate my food. I smiled. I laughed at jokes I didn't hear. But deep inside, I wasn't okay. And for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't sure I ever would be again. Everyone clapped and cheered after Haley's announcement. Everyone, except me. I froze. Smile locked on my face like a mask I couldn't peel off. My hand was still holding the glass, but my fingers had gone numb. I tried to swallow, but my throat was tight. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't move. My chair felt bolted to the ground. No one looked at me, not even Gwen. She was smiling, clapping, leaning in to hug Trevor like he was an old friend. It was like I'd turned invisible. A shadow in a place I helped build. All I kept thinking was, she planned this. She knew. And still, she let me show up, eat dinner, smile for photos, like everything was fine. I thought about all the birthdays, the late-night talks, the first time she drove a car. I was there. I was always there. But in one moment, one sentence, I became nothing, and no one even noticed me not clapping. When the dinner ended, we lingered outside a bit longer. Some people took selfies, others laughed and chatted. I just stood near the back, sipping the same drink I hadn't finished hours ago. Haley walked past me, holding Trevor's arm like he was the star of the night. I caught her eye for just a second. She smiled, but not at me. She was still glowing from the attention. I tried to remind myself it wasn't personal, that maybe she was just caught up in the moment, that maybe she'd talk to me later and explain. But deep down, I knew better. I had spent 10 years thinking I was her father, not her stepfather, not Mom's husband. I showed up for everything. I paid for school, food, therapy when she needed it. I defended her when teachers gave up on her. And yet, when it mattered most, I wasn't even worth a mention. That night, I drove home in silence, watching her laugh with Trevor in the rearview mirror of my mind. The car was silent, but my head was loud. I kept replaying the dinner. Haley's face when she saw Trevor. The way she called him Dad without blinking. The clapping. The way no one looked at me. Gwen broke the silence. That went well, didn't it? I looked at her, trying to find a trace of concern, but she was just scrolling through photos on her phone, smiling at one of the group shots. Yeah, I mumbled, forcing a breath through clenched teeth. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't even bring up the announcement. It was like no one had noticed what happened. Or worse, they had, and they didn't care. I stared out the window the rest of the ride. Streetlights blurred into yellow streaks. My stomach turned with every bump. I had never felt so unwanted in my own family. And the hardest part was knowing I still had one more invoice in my inbox waiting to be paid. The next morning I checked my email. There it was, an invoice from the venue. Over $3,000 still due next week. My name was on the line, credit card info saved. All it would take was one click. I stared at the screen. Then I walked to the kitchen and made coffee. Strong. Black. I didn't say good morning to anyone. I sat at the table, sipping it slowly, rereading the invoice. I tried to tell myself it was just money, that I had committed to this, that it was the right thing to do. But the truth was screaming inside me. I wasn't paying for her wedding anymore. I was paying to feel erased. The anger wasn't loud. It was cold, quiet, steady. A slow burn under my skin that told me, you're done being a ghost in your own life. I didn't click the pay now button. Not yet. Something was changing in me. That night, I knocked on Haley's bedroom door. She looked up from her laptop and smiled. Hey, what's up? I sat down across from her. My hands rested on my knees. I didn't yell. I didn't scold. I just asked one question, softly. Why didn't you tell me? She blinked. Tell you what? That your dad was walking you down the aisle, she shrugged. I didn't think it was a big deal. He's my real dad. It just felt natural. I nodded slowly. Her words were like ice. Not meant to be cruel, but still sharp, still cutting. I see, I said. She looked back at her screen. You're still paying, right? I didn't answer. I just stood up and left the room. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about every time I showed up when no one else did. And I knew this wasn't about a wedding anymore. It was about finally being done begging to matter. The next few days, I couldn't stop remembering everything. The first time Haley called me Dad, she was 9. Nervous, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. The night I stayed up with her when she had the flu, her forehead burning, me holding her hand in the dark. The middle school dance I chaperoned because Gwen had to work. The college tours, the late night talks, the broken hearts. The hugs that made it all feel worth it. All those years, I thought we were building something. A bond. A family. Now I was just the guy who pays. I stood in the garage that night, hands in my pockets, staring at the toolbox I gave her last Christmas. She'd barely used it, but I remembered how happy she looked when I handed it to her. It hit me again. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about all the times I'd said nothing, hoping she'd see me the way I saw her. She didn't. And maybe she never had. The rehearsal was held 2 days before the wedding. Gwen asked me to come, just for support. I went, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see it with my own eyes. I arrived a little late. Slipped into the back pew of the small chapel. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. There Haley was, in her white rehearsal dress, laughing, glowing, walking arm in arm with Trevor like they'd never spent a day apart. They rehearsed the walk twice. Then again, I watched him beam with pride while holding her close. No one asked me to walk. No one even asked if I had thoughts or feelings. I was just there. A placeholder, background noise. After the practice, someone asked if I'd take a group photo. I said yes. I held the camera steady, pretending my heart wasn't breaking. Haley looked so happy. Trevor looked like a hero. And I just disappeared behind the lens. They stood in front of the flower arch, all smiles. Gwen, Trevor, Liam's family, the bridesmaids, and groomsmen. Haley didn't even glance toward me when she said, "Can you take a few from the side too?" I did. I framed the shot perfectly. Lighting balanced, everyone centered. Click, click, click. Then, quietly, I lowered the camera. That's when I saw the reflection in a glass window. Me, standing alone, no part of the picture. I wasn't supposed to be in the frame. I wasn't supposed to be in the memory. Just the one holding the camera. Haley ran up after, hugged me and said, "Thanks. You're the best." I smiled, but inside I felt small, disposable. A man trusted with a lens, not a legacy. It was the moment I realized this whole event would be remembered without me. And for the first time in a decade, I accepted that truth and began to plan what I'd do next. The morning of the wedding, the house was chaos. Makeup, hair, music, laughter. No one spoke to me unless they needed something. I ironed my shirt, shaved, got dressed quietly. No one asked if I was riding in the limo. I drove myself. When I arrived at the venue, guests were pouring in. 250 seats. A sea of faces I didn't know. I looked for even one person from the list of 20 I had given Haley. Not a single one. The seats filled quickly. Everyone buzzing. No one noticed I stood near the back. The ceremony started. Haley walked down the aisle with Trevor, tears in her eyes. Applause filled the space. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just watched, arms crossed, heart still. This wasn't about bitterness anymore. It was about finally understanding where I stood. And I was done standing quietly. The toast would come soon. And for once, I wasn't going to hide behind a smile. Dinner was served, plates clattered, laughter echoed through the hall. I stayed quiet, waited, watched. Then the best man gave a funny speech. The maid of honor told sweet childhood stories. Finally, someone said, "Let's hear from the father of the bride." Heads turned. Someone handed me the mic. I stood slowly, glass in hand. I looked at Haley. She smiled, expecting something warm. I cleared my throat. For 10 years, I helped raise a smart, strong, kind young woman. I showed up to school plays, stayed up late helping with homework, and watched her grow. She kept smiling. But tonight, I've realized something. This moment, this stage, it belongs to someone else. And that's okay. Her smile started to fade. So, I'll be stepping back from paying for the rest of this wedding. I hope the memories are just as beautiful without my name on the check. Cheers. Silence. You could hear a fork drop. I sipped my wine, and for the first time all day, I actually tasted it. Haley's face froze. The smile she wore so easily turned stiff, like a mask cracking under pressure. Around the room, mouths hung open. Someone dropped their fork. Even the music stopped. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. I just told the truth, calmly, clearly, finally. She opened her mouth like she might say something, but no words came out. Trevor, the one who walked her down the aisle, looked confused, unsure whether to stand beside her or disappear. Gwen didn't move. And me? I sat back down. It was done. I had spoken the words my silence had held for too long. Not to hurt her, not to embarrass her, just to finally stop pretending. Because pretending was what had made this moment possible in the first place. And I was done with that. No one came over. No one clinked their glass to lighten the mood. The air sat heavy and still. Even the servers moved more carefully, like they didn't want to make eye contact. I took another sip of wine. Across the room, Haley looked shaken. Liam leaned in, whispering something. She shook her head, wiped at her eyes. I thought I'd feel some satisfaction, some power in finally being heard. But what I felt was peace, because for once I wasn't the doormat. I wasn't the ATM. I wasn't invisible. I was just a man who knew his worth and decided, finally, to act like it. The rest of the night blurred. I didn't stay for cake. I didn't pose for photos. I slipped out unnoticed, just like I'd arrived. Only this time, I wasn't leaving hurt. I was leaving free. That night, I packed a small bag and drove to my friend's house. He poured me a drink and said, "You look lighter." "I feel it," I told him. No anger, no regret, just space. Inside my chest, where all that heaviness used to sit. I turned my phone off, no texts, no calls. The next morning, I watched the sunrise with a quiet mind. Gwen called. I didn't answer, not because I didn't care, but because I had finally stopped making myself available to people who didn't see me. That was the last lesson this wedding taught me. Love isn't about who shows up when it's convenient, it's about who sees you and chooses you, even when no one's watching. And I deserved that. A few days later, I turned my phone back on. There was a message from Haley. Just one line. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at it for a long time. The words were soft, careful, but they didn't undo anything. They didn't make me part of the photos. They didn't put my friends back on the guest list. They didn't ask me to walk her down the aisle. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to say. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was calm. She had made her choices, and so had I. Weeks passed. The wedding came and went. The photos were posted online. I wasn't in a single one. No surprise there. But I didn't flinch when I saw them. Because I knew I had finally stepped out of a role I was never truly given, only expected to play. No more bills showed up. No more emails. No more pretending. I wasn't her dad anymore. I was the man who showed up until I didn't. And that's okay. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go with dignity, not bitterness. Now, I spend weekends with friends, I read more, I breathe easier, and sometimes, when people ask why I look so relaxed, I raise my glass and say, because I finally gave a toast I'd been holding in for 10 years. And it was the most expensive thing I didn't pay for.